Good evening, everybody. This is Cyrus Stark and True Temper Rocket. This is episode 7 of The Soul of a Fighter podcast, and we welcome you, and we hope you enjoy this latest episode. True Temper, you got anything to say?
Well, nothing too much other than it's a beautiful day here.
Yeah, that's good. Man, these August. Well, basically, we're going to be the main topics of discussion for this 7th episode are going to be we're 1 week out from the Mayweather Jr. versus McGregor fight, if you want to call it that, or event, or money grab, or whatever else you
circus,
whatever. Yeah, circus. Send in the clowns. Huh? So we're going to be discussing that, like breaking it down, giving our predictions. We're also going to be discussing all the everything that's happened around it, all the misinformation, all the bullshit, all the half truths and propaganda around it. It's been a lot of fun following it, but there've been some things around it. So we're going to be discussing that, what it means for the sport, everything. We're going to be talking about Dana White and his latest comments and his actions and his treatment of fighters. We're going to talk about the Nevada Athletic State Commission. Well, mainly their hypocrisy, considering the latest news this week that they've allowed them to fight in 8-ounce gloves, which is a huge no-no. They've never, they just don't do that. They've broken their own laws twice now, two of the biggest ones. We're going to discuss that. We're also going to, of course, talk about fighter rights, like from every angle. The fact that, fighters are underpaid, the fact that Mick Leprechaun is allowed to fight outside the UFC, that they're co-promoting, they're cross-promoting, co-promoting, or leasing their fighter out to boxing and to Mayweather Promotions with no problem. But other fighters on their roster have been trying to do the same for years, and they haven't let them. They've even taken them to court over it. So we're going to talk about the double standard. We're going to talk about the fact we're also going to touch on the fact that Cigano, Junior Dos Santos, just flagged, and just discussing like how fighters are treated as far as that, like the drug testing, the draconian drug testing measures and rules that fighters have to go through.
If I can ask Cyrus,
Yeah.
you just mentioned how the UFC won't allow their fighters to participate in events other than UFC events. Is that something that is stated in their contracts? Because I haven't ever seen a full contract that a fighter with the UFC signs.
Yeah.
Do they agree not to work for any other promotion other than UFC legally?
In a roundabout way, yes. The language is a bit different. Actually, I was fortunate enough to see part of one. It was one page. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I mean it varies, but the uniform contract is over 2 or 3 pages. But I saw the main part, like, and basically they sign. That's the big problem. Like every lawyer that's ever seen a UFC contract is shocked. And the one I got to see was from an ex-champion, one of the biggest stars in UFC history, and it was posted online. But I got to see it and I got to freeze frame it. I took a picture of it, but it's really shocking. Basically, they use like for however long your contract is, they go by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, no matter. Like for example, Anderson Silva just signed a 10-fight deal a couple years ago, right? Which is ridiculous. But basically, for however long you sign with the UFC, you sign over your rights to fight. So basically, they control everything. It's not that you're not allowed to fight; it's that they decide whether you can fight in any other combat sports, which is bullshit. But then also,
it might be bullshit, Cyrus, but when you put your name on a document, you're saying you're going to follow what that document says. You're going to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I think the person that signs it, they're responsible just as much as the UFC is responsible.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. When I say it's bullshit on both sides. I mean, for me, it's worse on the UFC side, but on the fighter side, it's like you're fucking yourself over. And this is not even the worst part, because a contract ends. Like, they can cut you, or you can completely you can complete your obligations and move on, right? That's not the biggest start. Well, okay, there is a stipend to that. There's a thing that's really weaselly. Is if you're a champion, every time you defend your belt successfully, they add 2 or 3 fights to your deal.
Okay.
That's fucked
automatically?
Up. So basically, automatically, that's in the contract. And again, you say they sign it, that's, they it's their responsibility too. Yeah, I get that. But yeah, when you're a champion, that's why, like, fighters, like, for example, a guy like Yoel Romero, he fought for an interim recently. That was fucked up. He should have never accepted that fight, because he's okay now because he didn't win that fight. If he would have won, he's not a real champ in the sense that he's not, given that undisputed champion status. He's an interim champion, but his contract is lengthened, and that is bullshit. And, that's really messed up. So basically they have that. And this is the really, really, really nasty part, which is bullshit. And that's why 90% of MMA, so-called MMA managers out there are scumbags, because they tell their fighters to sign this shit. You sign your fiduciary rights off to the UFC for life. Your image rights are signed off to the UFC for life. So that means they have the right to use your likeness on any poster, any fight breakdown, any promotion. Like, for example, I don't know, like, let's say I understand what you're saying. 3 fights for the.
What? Yeah, so what you're saying?
They can use your image for life.
What we're looking at is a fighter or fighters that sign with this company. These people are the next best thing to desperate.
Yeah, but a lot of fighters are. You have to remember, like, these guys, like. Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's how the UFC operates.
Yeah, and it's abusive. It's wrong. Look, it's crazy. Like, I've never been a UFC fan. There are guys out there, a lot of them, who were UFC fans. They were fans of the letters more than any fighter. They were fans of Dana White and the UFC. There's nothing wrong with that, because the UFC stood for the best fight the best. It stood for there's no hiding, there's no ducking. You eat what you kill, and I love that. But now it's changed. But it's like this. I mean, one of my favorite MMA, just journalists in general, sports journalists in general, is a guy called Kid Nate, and he made this. He filmed this video once, and he calls it. He has a series on Bloody Elbow or MMANation.com on YouTube, and he has this show he does, and it's called the MMA Bunker. And one of the ones one of his episodes was basically what we're talking about, and he's explaining like this, and he's a hardcore UFC fan, and he's been a fan of Combat 3 since the beginning, right? And he was saying basically the Zuffa era can be cut in 2. The first 5 years and then the rest. The first 5 years, they were amazing. Like, they saved the promotion, the UFC. They bought it when they were going broke, and they put it back on the map. They gave it a shot in the arm. They invested like something like $50-60 million, and they didn't get anything back. They put their heart and soul into it. They put a lot of money into it. Dana White worked so hard to get this thing off the ground. And like that's when I really loved Dana White. I was like such a fan. I didn't always agree with what he said, but you could see the passion for fights, for fighting, for boxing, for combat sports in general. And he put his lifeblood into it. Then success happened. They finally got it to work. And you could say they saved the sport, because if the UFC, well, at the time you did have Pride, but the thing is, Pride, as great and as successful as they were not run like a sports league, or they were not run professionally. They were extremely successful, but ran with the Yakuza. You couldn't really call it a serious sports franchise, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, because there was always the risk of it, you know, going crazy, you know, like completely falling over, because it's organized crime, even though they did great things for the sport. And eventually they did, because there were too many scandals, and Fuji TV pulled their plug because it was just like, it wasn't a good look. And they kind of went under, and that's how the UFC bought them. You understand? But you could say, maybe not the whole sport, but they saved a big part of the sport, because nothing got bigger than the UFC eventually. But then the second half is when they went mad with power. That's when they started abusing fighters. That's when they started using tactics that were really disgusting, like the way they bullied gyms, the way they started that whole thing that we were just talking about. And it got really abusive. Like they cut fighters, they threatened fighters, they started messing with fighters' reputations. They got abusive, and from that time forward, it just got worse and worse and worse. I mean, they fucking, like, the greatest. There's a good chance, and since UFC 214, I think John Jones is the greatest ever. Before, it was GSP and John Jones, like almost neck and neck. I mean, GSP is a GOAT, but I think John Jones might have the edge. But we're talking about one of the greatest to ever do it, right? One of the three greatest to ever do it. And they stuck him in a cage with a fighter in Vitor Belfort that they knew had failed a drug test. They didn't tell anybody. They did not tell John Jones. So they stuck him in there with a dangerous fighter, a guy that was I mean, Vitor is one of the greatest, like as far as skills, as far as just nastiness. Like the guy is an amazing mixed martial artist, and he was on steroids. I mean, he pissed hot, right? And they knowingly put him in there without telling him anything, and threatened anybody who knew with legal action, which is just so, I mean, it's ironic, it's disgusting, it's immoral, it's amoral, whatever adjective you want to put to it. It's disgusting, it's wrong. And just because they fought in Canada, they were able to do that. But that's, you know, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of other shit, like John Jones refusing to fight Chael Sonnen on a week's notice, which is his right. Like if a fighter doesn't want to take a last minute opponent with a few days to go, he should, you know, that's his right. And like him refusing to risk his title against a fighter he hadn't trained for warranted Dana White calling a whole press conference just to dump all over him and his coaches. Like, I mean, I don't know how many times I've said this. If a fighter takes a last minute opponent, he should be praised for it. But if he refuses, he shouldn't be castigated or chastised for it. It's his right. That means that all it means if he refuses is not that he's a coward. It doesn't mean that, you know, he's scared. It means one thing. It means that he's taking his career seriously. He's a professional and he wants to be treated that way. If he accepts it, then, you know, more power to him. But it's this really weird abusive thing. It's almost like the guys who run the UFC. No, it's not almost. It is. Like Dana and his cronies, the guys who run the sport don't even see their own fighters as pros. Like you would not ask Michael Jordan to, like, oh yeah, I know you were going to take on the Utah Jazz, but we changed our mind. We'd like you to take on the Seattle Supersonics, right? Like at the last minute, he'd say no. Like, you're gonna stop. But I mean, okay, you know what? That is way far fetched because we're talking about a professional sports team. This is not an individual. Okay, here we go. How about this? Jordan and the Bulls are facing the Seattle Supersonics in 1996 after a legendary season, and like a week before the finals, the NBA finals start, right? They say we're going to change the dates. You know, like when the finals are starting, you know exactly which game is when, right? You know, like game 1 is June 1st. Game 2 is June 5th. Game 3, you know everything. Like,
Yeah.
imagine if they changed
Yeah.
all the dates. And oh yeah, by the way, Michael, we're tired of waiting between games, so it's going to be a game every day. Like it's going to be, a game
Yeah.
after game after game, day after day, and no time to prepare, no time for the guy to get used to the new format. Just like, oh yeah, you do it, and if you don't do it, we're going to bitch about you. We're going to mess with your career. We're going to call a whole press conference, damage your brand, make you look like a coward. That's basically what Dana White did to just any world champion boxer, if he'd accept defending his title. But if your opponent pulls out, we're gonna change it with 2 days notice. Like, they'd laugh in your face because they have rights. Because I don't even think it's legal to change. I think for you to get a change of opponents in boxing, you have to have a minimum of, I think, a month or something, because otherwise it won't even be sanctioned. So it just shows there's a lack of respect for MMA fighters. And I mean, they take their sport is even in the sense that clear and present danger, not long-term. I think long-term boxing's still way more dangerous, but clear and present danger, like your arm getting torn to pieces, your leg getting smashed, all that shit, getting knocked out any which way. MMA is the most dangerous sport there is, because you can be taken down. And for a fighter to refuse taking a replacement opponent with a few days notice is completely reasonable. It's more than reasonable. So
sure it is.
There's a lot of that going on. And the fact that commissions don't seem to respect them, the fact that there are you get your share of really bad decisions, really, poor disrespect, this I remember Mayweather. I'll use an example. Mayweather versus Canelo. I love Canelo. To me, he's the best. If he isn't the number one pound for pound fighter in boxing right now, he's very close. He's in the top 3. He's the biggest star in boxing. And when he fought Mayweather, he got shut down. He even got hurt. But somehow there was a judge who has a history of bad decisions. I can't remember her name right now. She ruled that as a draw. I think Canelo maximum won 2 rounds. And yet she still scored it a draw. And that's in boxing, right? And you get those every once in a while, but not as often as you used to. And thankfully, it's not as prevalent as it used to be. You used to get some really fucked up decisions a lot, right? I mean, the worst decision I've seen recently was Pacquiao versus this Australian guy, right?
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah. Even though I didn't think the overall decision was that bad. I mean, I didn't think it was a robbery because the Australian cat made it close. I still thought Pacquiao had done enough to win, but if you want to give it to the guy, but for the guy, for one of the judges in Australia to only give Pacquiao 3 rounds, I think it was 9 rounds to 3 for the Australian guy. That is bullshit. That's poor. That's fucked up, Yep, so I had more of an issue with the scoring than the actual result. I thought Pacquiao had won, but if someone had seen it the other way, the guy had done just enough to win, I'm okay with it. It's not as big a robbery as as people make it out to be. That's my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree, but yeah, no, there's a lot of problems, man. A lot of problems in MMA. It's a beautiful sport. It's going from strength to strength in many ways, but there's a lot of problems because it's going from strength to strength for a lot of people, but not the fighters. There's some fighters, a select few, but not enough. And there's a lot of money being made off the fighters' backs, and it's unacceptable because the fighters should be getting minimum 50% of that. And I mean, in any walk of life, in any medium, in any entertainment medium, the artist has always had to fight for his rights, whether it was in music,
the NFL,
whether it was,
the players get 49% of the gross.
There you go. NBA, I think the players, basketball players, they get between 52 and 55%.
Yeah.
They went down to 50 for a while with the new collective bargaining, the new CBA. I think it's up to 55%. And I think the MLS, it's 45. The Major League Soccer, it's around 50 or just under 50. NHL is 50%. It's ridiculous. Like the fighters, honestly, UFC fighters get less than 10%. Dana White will say, "Oh yeah, it's close to 50 already." "Oh yeah, they do fine. They do fine. Don't worry, I know." Like the guy's the promoter. you can't trust anything he says. Like his job to lie. Like as a basis, promoters lie. That's their job. They're hype men. But like the fact that the promoter is controlling the purse strings, the fact that the promoter is matchmaking, the fact that how they run their careers is a huge problem, and the fact that the promoter will not release figures and stats and revenue is a problem because fighters don't know what they're asking for. And the beauty is that they played themselves because when they sold for $4.2 billion, they couldn't pretend anymore. They couldn't say, "Oh, that's all we've got. Take it or leave it." Fighters know. That's why fighters are getting nasty.
Well,
that's
the
why
fighters have no union.
Yeah. Well, they have nothing.
They
don't
have
even
nothing,
need it.
and until they get together and form a union, they're gonna remain having nothing. But with guys like who Rousey was, and guys like McGregor, who are in it for themselves, they could give a shit about anybody else. That's the way it's going to stay. There isn't going to be a union.
You know what?
I thought GSP was going to be a real spokesman for the union, but him taking this fight with Bisping tells me that GSP only cares about himself. He doesn't care about anybody else.
Well, it's really interesting you bring that up. I don't completely agree with, I kind of disagree with the whole GSP thing, and I'll explain why later, but I just like to touch on one thing. Rousey, actually, that was the last segment of our podcast episode, because I wanted to bring her up the way she's perceived. Actually, Rousey did speak up for her. Like from the simple, she never said we need a union. She never said we need an association. But one thing she did do, she always promoted her opponents. She always introduced the non-hardcore MMA fans to her opponents, because most of her opponents were unknown by the mainstream, or the guys tuning in for her. And she introduced her opponents to her audience and to the wider UFC audience who don't know as much, who aren't knowledgeable. And that is showing that already, like, that's way more than McGregor ever did, because McGregor, when he talks about his opponents, it's always insults. It's always putting them down. It's always like, "Oh, this guy's a bum. I'm going to knock him out in a few seconds." You understand? Like she introduced them in the sense that, "Oh, this girl, like Sarah McMahon, is a Olympic silver medalist. She's dangerous. She's one of the best female wrestlers ever. Like, she's really tough. I'm still going to beat her, but this is who Sarah McMahon is." And as well, I'll say another thing. When Nick Diaz was banned for life, or for 5 years, by the Nevada, the Nevada Athletic Commission, she spoke up for him. And she as the biggest star in the sport, she went out on a limb for him, something that McGregor had never done. And like that counts for something. Even though she got along with the brass and everything, she spoke up. I'll never forget that. And I have so much respect. I had so much respect for her for doing that. And she spoke up for a lot of other fighters. She spoke up for women fighters, for men fighters. Like when she thought something was wrong, she'd say it. McGregor is more the type to mock and to castigate. I mean, for Christ's sake, McGregor, when GSP, Cain Velasquez, TJ Dillashaw, Tim Kennedy, and Cowboy got together and how'd you say, formed the MMAAA as an association.
Yeah.
They've gone quiet now, but they actually took that step, and they got a really good team together. I don't know what's going on now, but the fact is they tried. Even if it fails, even if ultimately we never hear of them again, they tried it. They went for it. And there was a lot of negativity around it, and some of it I understood, some of it I thought was just so counterproductive. Like, you have these guys trying something, whether it's a dumb name, whether you don't agree with their methods, but don't spit on it before you tried it, right? And pardon me. The thing that really made me angry, that really disgusted me, is when somebody asked McGregor about it, he mocked them. He mocked GSP.
Yeah.
He mocked.
McGregor stood.
All of them. He said they're a bunch of losers.
By a union being
ahead.
formed, McGregor stood to lose money, and he wasn't going to have any part of it. The same thing with Rousey. Rousey would lose money if there was a union, and she's not going to have any part of it either.
Yeah, I don't even agree with that. See, that's I completely disagree with that, because a union, you don't have to lose money. But I'm not the biggest fan of unions. Like, I respect what a lot of unions do, but there's a lot of corruption in unions, and there's a lot of bullying in unions, because,
Yeah, but compared to what they got right now, the fighters have nothing. They got zip. They got shit. They have nothing. A union.
All right, True Temper.
A union
would help.
Yeah.
A union would help. But let me put this to you here. Like, I don't even think we need a union, because like I said, union is always open to corruption. Like, union started way back in the day. We know the story. We know, I don't know if you've seen that movie Fist by Norman Jewison with Sylvester Stallone and a bunch of other dudes. And it's a great movie because, it's basically the unofficial tale of Jimmy Hoffa. And Jimmy Hoffa did a lot of great things. Then he lost his way, started getting in with the mafia and the organized crime, and it fucked up. And he got greedy, and well, the story. I'm not the biggest fan of unions, and I've never joined a union, and I never will. But here's the thing: union, an association is more than good enough, and I think an association is better. Like, you look at and Dana White will always be there to tell you, like, oh, unions are no good.
Let's don't mince words here. They need a union, or they need an association, or they need an organization that the fighters can depend upon to represent them, okay, as a unit.
And their interests.
It doesn't have to be a union, and it doesn't have to be corrupt.
Exactly.
Anything would be better than what they got now.
Exactly. That's why I loved what GSP and Tim Kennedy and Cain Velasquez did. They made it an association. Okay, let me just say this. The closest thing to MMA, to professional MMA in sports, is tennis. As far as the athletes' rights and the way the athletes are, the schedule, the way the sport is set up, it's tennis. There's nothing closer to it. And basically, tennis belong to any association. Fighters don't belong to any competition. Like, the US Open has no rights over any player. But because it's an association, they can play for any competition they want. They can choose any competition they want. And they negotiate as an association. They, like, basically tennis, just like fighting is a selfish sport because you're not part of a team. Okay, you have your team around you, but it's all about the player or the fighter, right? And but the thing is, when the ATP tries to put forth any kind of directive or law or new rule, they have to go through the through the tennis players, the Professional Tennis Players Association. They can't impose anything. Okay, go ahead. You had something to say, True Temper.
What?
No, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I said, okay, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, okay, and honestly, that's what's needed in MMA, because this whole thing of the best, because like the NBA has a union, and I disagree with it, because basically the way the NBA is set up, the players, I forget what it's called, the NBLA or whatever it's called, it's set up to screw over the best. Like Jordan was underpaid his whole career because basically NBA players are the best paid. But the best paid are the guys at the bottom of the sport. So they're guaranteed to make $5 million. Whereas there's a salary cap for the best. Like a guy like Michael Jordan should have written his own check. And really every team should have paid him because that's what he did for the league, right? Some money. That's how big a star he was. He made the whole thing bigger. So I don't agree with Ronda making less money or John Jones making less money or GSP making less money, but I definitely agree that the minimum in the UFC, the highest level of MMA in the world, guys shouldn't be making 20 and 20 or even 10 and 10. Like the minimum a fighter who fights for the UFC should make, even if he's a rookie, even if it's his first fight, should be 50 and 50. 50 to show, that's the very minimum. And you've got champions, like, you've got champions who are on less than $250,000 to fight. And that's just unacceptable. It makes the sport, it makes the UFC look cheap. And it doesn't sound like a serious sport when you see these things. And an association would negotiate for the lowest salary, and it definitely wouldn't negotiate for the highest salary. Like basically, it's open. You get what you can.
That sounds fine to me, Cyrus. But at present, the fighters have nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's why an association is needed, and that's why, basically, I'm saying the union. A lot of fighters don't like it because a lot of the especially UFC fighters are libertarian or right or conservative or even Republican leaning, and Republicans, like people who lean, like let's say towards the right, don't like unions, the word union, because it reminds them of communism or socialism, and I'm one of them. I'm one of these people who does not trust unions. So, and even a union would help for a bit, and then it would be a problem. So that's why I'm not even pro-union. I'm pro-association. Just the fighters getting together, signing their names, giving someone the authority. Like basically telling a high-powered lawyer and there's plenty of them who would be more than happy to help him, but they say, we need you guys to come on our side. Not on our side. We need you guys to sign on the dotted line and give us the power to go to the UFC and negotiate on your behalfs. I'm not saying they're all in it to help the fighters. Some of them are in it to make money, so you have to weed those guys out.
Okay, but I can agree with you, Cyrus. But this movement, or this lip service that GSP and these few other guys gave to this association they were talking about, it's done nothing. It's nowhere.
Yeah, because nobody joined. I mean, actually, from what I've heard, and I've spoken to some people who in the know, they said it took a hit because they made a huge mistake. They had it was both one of the best things they did, and it was also one of the worst. Basically, they had Bjorn Rebney there. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy. He's
no.
He's quite okay. Basically, Bjorn Rebney is a lifelong martial artist himself, and he became a promoter. He started in boxing, and then he moved on to MMA. And he was the one who founded Bellator. He founded Bellator, and he sold, I think, 90% of it to Viacom, Paramount, and basically he was one of the biggest culprits in abusing fighters. Like he was, if truth be told, in many ways he was worse than like he did. I mean, he's one of these guys. Like if he got along with you, he was really cool. If he didn't, and he didn't get along with plenty of fighters, he would screw you over worse. He did some things to like Eddie Alvarez, to Jorge Masvidal that were worse than anything the UFC have done. Like along the lines of the UFC, and sometimes even worse. And basically, it got so bad that after, like, he made a whole bunch of money selling Bellator to Viacom, and after a year of Viacom owning it, they moved him on and brought in Scott Coker, who's probably the greatest MMA promoter in history. Like personally, like that's my bias, because my favorite MMA promotion was Strikeforce, and he's known. Like I have yet to hear of a fighter that fought for him or worked with him say a bad word about him, because he's as honest and straightforward as you'll ever see. And basically, when he took over, it became a lot better. There were a few hiccups. There were a couple guys that that he let go, but he never went. He never went under the belt. He never crossed that line with him. Like there was Will Brooks, a guy I like very much, but when Scott Coker took over, Will Brooks wasn't happy about a couple things, and it was mostly like the way he was promoting, and he very publicly said it. And Scott Brooks gave him his release. He said, "You don't like it here? You don't have to stay here. Here's your release papers, and good luck for the future. Like you can fight anywhere you want." And Will Brooks ended up going to the UFC. There's a couple other fighters he released that he. Pardon me, I'm so sorry. Caught the sniffles today. And so basically, this guy called Bjorn Rebney. They had him. They hired him as a consultant, because basically he's no longer a promoter. He doesn't have any promotion that he's forming, and value. He said, "I'm part of this. I'm going to start fighting for fighters' rights." He said like he made some mistakes and he wanted to help, but the problem is having him as part of the call, like forefront, like if you look at the picture, you see him there next to the fighters, was a mistake, because every fighter who knew him was saying, man, I can't trust this. I can't put my faith in this Fighters Association, because Bjorn Rebney is there. He's part of it. And Bjorn Rebney is he's suspect, man. Like I can't trust him.
Yeah.
So that was a huge mistake. It was a stroke of genius to include him, but it was a mistake to have him forefront. Like basically, he shouldn't have been anywhere near the conference call. He shouldn't have been anywhere near the pictures, because a ton of fighters said, I just can't be part of this if he's going to be part of this. And of course, like the enemies, yeah, go ahead.
Well, where is this association today?
They're still around. This is from what I've heard. Okay, so basically, this guy told me they're still around. They're still making moves, but they're on hiatus because Tim Kennedy retired. He's on a mission right now. But when he's done, he's going to start making moves. But they've got like they're working with what's it called? Creative Artists Agency, which is one of the like basically you got WME, IMG, the owners of the UFC, and CAA are like their equivalent. They're like the two biggest talent agencies in Hollywood. And CAA backed the Fighters Association, and they've got like access to their lawyers and shit, and apparently, and they're making moves. They're just being very quiet about it, and they're trying to be frank, they're trying to do some damage control and try and fix the damage that their mistake caused. Because basically, Well, let's put cards on the table here. Bjorn Rebney and Dana White have been at it for years. And Bjorn Rebney, being, you know, like, he can't get out of his own way, he made this whole thing about his hatred for Dana White. Like, he went off script. He started going at Dana White personally, calling him a gluttonous pig, calling him a criminal, and then Dana White went right back at him. So it became Bjorn Rebney versus Dana White, which was just ridiculous. Like, you know, like, that's not what this association is about. It's about fighting for fighters' rights. So that did a lot of damage, and a lot of people said, that's not professional, that's not serious. And a few other people had some very good comments to make about it. Like, Bjorn, like, what they should have done as well was they should have made Bjorn Rebney sign a contract, basically legally binding contract, stating that he would not try and promote for like 5 to 10 years, right? Like a legally binding contract. So that would help fighters trust him. People trust him, because a lot of fighters took it as, oh, this is just about Bjorn Rebney wanting to get back into the fight game as a promoter. So if they made him sign that, if he's really sincere about what he wants to do, he would have signed that, and people would have been able to trust him a lot easier, because that's the first thing Dana White said. Dana White called him the biggest scumbag in sports history. Then he said all he's trying to do is open a new, start a new promotion. And the thing was, if those guys, the heads of the association had made him sign that, then he could have come right back and said, no, this is not what this is about. This is about me, like, fighting for fighters' rights and undoing the damage I've done. And it would have helped prove his character, that he's sincere and that he wants to make a difference. So, and I think that's what's going on right now, apparently. Like, that's what I was told, that they're trying to undo some of the damage that was done through that.
Well, and the only constructive thing I see coming out of this whole association crap after Hunt started this shit is that GSP has got he's got a championship challenge. That's the only thing I see coming out of this.
Yeah.
I see
he was already negotiating.
Yeah, well, I see nothing else. GSP got his name in the media. That's all. That's the only thing I see constructive that happened.
Yeah, but you see, GSP doesn't need that. Like, I honestly believe GSP was sincere about this whole thing, because GSP doesn't need an association to get his name in the media. GSP is one of the biggest names in the sports history. Like, if GSP wants his name in the media, he could easily do it. He's got many platforms. He's got many options. I mean, he's one of the few MMA fighters in history who's mainstream. Like, he's got a mainstream sponsor called Under Armour. That's like, what, the third biggest sports supplier in the world now, I believe, behind Nike and I think you don't get bigger than Under Armour. So he's got them promoting him. He's got them, sponsoring him. He's got basically he is the biggest sports star in Canada. Like, anytime he wants to talk about anything, they're more than happy to talk to him. And even in the States, still a big name. Like, people saying, like, so I see it differently. But, I understand. I do understand your views, though, because it really doesn't look good. And the fact that,
Cyrus, it really doesn't matter to me if one way or the other. But I don't see that this movement that GSP was involved with is doing anything. There's nothing being written about it. Nobody's talking about it. Nothing is going on with it.
That is true.
And the problem still exists. The fighters are still getting screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is very true.
And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's the fault of GSP and others involved in the movement. What I am saying is that nothing is being done. Nothing.
Well, I see your point, and I do respect your point, and I can't tell you how much how frustrated I am that it's moving so slowly, but it's moving. For years, there was nothing being done. I'm talking about nothing, and actually worse than nothing. About 12 years ago, there was a fighter. He was the first fighter, MMA fighter, to ever appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And this guy's name was Roger Huerta. And this man tried to single-handedly do something positive for his fellow fighters. He tried to speak up for them. He used he was on the cusp of becoming a superstar. And he tried to single-handedly fight for to start an association, a union, and the UFC wrecked his career. I mean, in the most horrible way. They destroyed him. They destroyed his career, his reputation. He had to, they cut him. He went to Bellator, but he was never the same after that. So, but I mean, like, it really, really cost him. But I have so much respect for that dude because, he tried. And that's what would happen. Anybody who'd even breathe the word association or union or fighters' rights, they get dealt with. And, of course, the first one ever to really do that, to really, stand up and say, look, we got to do something, was Randy Couture. And Randy Couture was a huge star. He was like, one of the biggest stars back then. He was one of the main reasons the UFC was saved. He was a big pay-per-view star along with Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. And Randy was somebody who understood legal language. He understood what it meant that, your image rights being signed off to them for life. He was the first one to refuse to sign those things, and a couple other fighters followed him. And he was the first one to say, we need to band together. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to. His thing has always been to bring the Ali Act to MMA, which is basically fighters are independent contractors. You can't dictate or when they fight. They can fight anywhere they want. Like purse bids, the purse goes to, people can bid for a fighter, all that stuff. He was the one who started all that. And he's still fighting for fighters' rights to this day. He is a hero. But Huerta fought too, and he got dealt with, and it was a horrible thing to witness. But now, today, fighters know more about their rights and have more of a clue than ever before. And I'm really thankful for that. The other thing, there are positives. Like, you're starting to see fighters clap back or fight back way more than you've ever seen. You got Luke Rockhold telling Dana to shut the fuck up instead of talking shit. You've got, that's something. That's, that allegory, that little tiny stone rolling down the hill, and by the time it gets down the mountain or the hill, it turns into a boulder. That's what we're seeing now. It's going very, very slowly, but it's going. It's going, and it's building momentum. And even though that whole triple A or whatever you want to call it, that GSP, Tim Kennedy, and the rest did, fails, even if one day we hear that they've shut down and never going to hear from them again, that's a step in the right direction, man. Like, even if it was, it's a step. The Leslie Smiths of the world, constantly fighting, constantly asking questions, constantly standing up and risking her career. That's another thing. The Kung Lees and the Nate Quarries and they have another association out there, and they're the ones suing the UFC. That's another step. That's a beautiful step, and if it works or not, momentum, and you're going to see something good happen finally. I don't know how long it's going to take, because fighters are, and I'm not saying this to denigrate them, but being a fighter is a selfish discipline. You're not. Your mentality is not to think of the others, it's to think of you. So it's going to take a while, but fighters are finally getting clued up about it, and they're realizing that enough is enough, and it's a good thing. So yeah, I see positives. It's not enough, it's not fast enough, and it needs to get better, and fighters need to educate themselves more on it. I agree. But there are positives, and I see some good things in the future. So it's not all bleak, and it's not all, and I'm really thankful for that. Uh, you know what? I just realized something, True Temper. We didn't even get out of the. This was just a breakdown of the podcast. All this has just been the breakdown. This was just introducing the different topics, and we went deep, man. Okay, should we break down really quick or
break down who?
Like should we start like the topics or do you need to go?
No, we can do some stuff.
All right. Okay. So, Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Conor McGregor, or McGregor, as it's come to be known. Your thoughts, please.
My thoughts. Well, of course, the word circus comes to mind. I think the whole thing is a circus, and it's something I wouldn't pay for, and I won't pay for. I'm just curious about it. I'm not really a fan of it, and I'm just not a fan of spectacle like that. I'm more of a genuine sports fan, I guess I'd rather say. This just doesn't. The spectacle just doesn't hold any interest for me. I look at it as just a money grab. That's all it is. It's just nothing more than that. And when it's over and done with, unless somebody gets killed, we won't even be talking about this in a couple of years at all. And it's supposed to be the biggest paid fight ever in the history of sport. And I can't understand that either, but I guess it is. I guess that's about all I can say about it, Cyrus.
Okay,
Hello?
well, that's great. Yeah, and I'm here. That's great. Like that's basically my feelings exactly. Basically, like I think like I don't have a problem with the fight, although I don't think it's a fight because it's not competitive. It's insulting the fact that that it's an MMA fighter who's never fought in boxing before against, in my humble opinion, the greatest boxer that's ever lived, is an insult to both sports. It's especially an insult to MMA, in my opinion, because like anybody who loves MMA, like I'm talking about hardcore fans here who defended MMA, who defended the UFC. I remember the days when I'd say like MMA fan, and I explain it to people. People would talk about it like it was porn, like it was shameful, and having to defend the sport to others was sometimes painful, or sometimes like it was unbelievable, like the ideas that people had in their heads. And finally, like last year was such a beautiful thing happened. Like New York unbanned the sport to be seen in Madison Square Garden.
That was a big deal.
It was huge. It was a beautiful thing. It was a special night. But like after that, they do this, and it's not serious because aka Mick Leprechaun, as I call him, is the biggest star in the sport today. Been marketed that way, and he's not even close to being the best. I can give you 10 fighters who are better than him on skill. And but still, as the biggest star in the sport today, he's doing this. He's not defending his belt.
Nope.
He's running off to a whole other sport, because that's what it is. Boxing has nothing to do with MMA, just like boxing has nothing to do with or wrestling, but it's completely different discipline, a completely different medium, if you will, and taking on the best ever in boxing is just not it's just nonsense. And the fact that a lot of people who are casual fans think of McGregor as the best in the sport are gonna watch him get schooled by a master. Is this gonna bring down the whole? Like, for a lot of people, it's gonna do damage to the sport of MMA, because they're gonna think MMA fighters and fans are just a bunch of idiots, a bunch of delusional idiots. So, I mean, it's not going to be permanent damage, but it will do it, and it will make a mockery of the sport. But like, I've said it from the beginning, and I've said it before, the fact that it's sanctioned and that it's being, the Nevada Athletic Commission have given their stamp of approval to it, and it's officially sanctioned, is a huge problem for me. Because
let me ask you a question, Cyrus. How much cash money is this worth to the Nevada Athletic Commission?
A ton, a shit ton. I don't know. I can't tell you numbers, but it's got to be a shit ton. And it's not just the Athletic Commission; it's the state of Nevada. Like,
the NAC isn't doing it just to be good guys, right?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, they've never been good guys. I mean, ask Nick Diaz if they're good guys. Ask Nate Diaz if they're good guys. Ask any fighter they've unfairly punished or sanctioned for nonsense. I mean, ask Vanderlei Silva, a guy that they illegally tried to test, and when he refused the test, painted him as a drug cheat, and banned for life, for refusing to be tested illegally. They had no right to test him that day. This is like 2014. They showed up at his gym. They didn't have the proper ID, and they said, "We're going to test you." He said, "I'm not sanctioned to fight here. You have no right to test me." And they banned him for life. You understand? So, and then they allow this. So, like, I can't tell you how angry it makes me, how disgusted it is. Disgusted I am. No, it really does. And like, they compounded it this week, because this week they allowed I'm sure everybody who will listen to this is aware, but if you're not, basically they broke another golden rule this week by allowing Floyd and Conor to fight in 8-ounce gloves, which is a complete. It's just unbelievable, because you're not allowed to fight. They have laws in boxing, and that's just like unbreakable until now, where basically if you fight at 154 pounds, the smallest glove you can wear is the 10-ounce glove, and they've allowed them to fight in 8-ounce gloves. And it's just like, is this one thing after another?
Well, what was their justification for that?
That wasn't justification. There is none. Like, just oh man, you can't have a justification for that. You can't. You cannot. It's, the only way you can justify it is like taking your time and voting on it properly, and saying, okay, the fighters have, and it's not just two fighters. I'm talking about the sport of boxing, the fighter's body. I think they have, the Ali Act. Through the Ali Act, the fighters, boxers, have gotten together and said, we want smaller gloves. And they put it to a vote, and they hear intelligent arguments, a lot more intelligent than I just wanna. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm Floyd Mayweather, or I'm Conor McGregor, and I want to fight with an 8-ounce glove because, I want to fuck him up. Like, I'm talking about serious. And by the way, like, the reason they have rules about like the size of your glove is for the fighter's safety. Yeah. To protect the fighter health, protecting fighters from brain damage. So, this is, and this week, I'm not an idiot. I don't believe, I don't believe in fairy tales or, fairies and all that shit. But I really thought, I mean, for Christ's sake, his own uncle, Floyd Mayweather's uncle, did not believe they'd do it. I saw a video on the Floyd Mayweather boxing channel, and his own uncle, Jeff Mayweather, said, I do not believe they will allow them to fight in 8-ounce gloves because it's about fighter safety. And 2 days before they allowed him to do it, the athletic commission's doctors put out a joint statement saying they shouldn't do it because it's dangerous for fighters, particularly the fact that one of the fighters in this fight has never fought in boxing before. It's unadvisable and it's not safe for the fighter's health. And yet they allow them to do it. So this is really bad. And again, I'm not blaming Mayweather for this. I'm not blaming McGregor for this. I'm blaming the people whose jobs, their only job is to look out for the interests of the sport and of the fighter's safety. And they fucking pissed all over that. And it just makes me so angry.
Yeah.
It disgusts me. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. And you know,
which of the two fighters wanted the 8-ounce gloves?
Both of them. Both of them wanted.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Both of them. I think McGregor wanted it more because McGregor sincerely believes that the smaller the glove, the harder he can hit. It's just that simple. It's just that stupid. And it's true. You're going to feel it more. But what he doesn't understand is he's not going to touch Mayweather. Okay, now we're moving on to fight predictions. Like, let's do this now. Yeah, but both of them asked. And basically, to be honest, like the way I see it, the only reason they allowed it is because Mayweather officially asked. He challenged. He put forth a challenge. I think McGregor could have asked all he wanted. They would have never done it. But you know how it is.
Yeah.
What Mayweather wants in Nevada, he gets. And to a certain extent, rightly so, because, you know, he makes so much money for but still, like, I can understand why they give him the respect, the time of day. Like, if he asks for something formally, he should be heard. Like, any fighter should be heard. But, you know, he's earned his place in boxing. He's earned that respect. But that doesn't mean you should accept anything he asks. And the fact they accepted it without a formal, you know, without really delving into it and listening to the right people is just disgraceful. But yeah, both of them asked. They officially made a demand to, you know, fight in smaller gloves, and it was granted. But yeah, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. It's.
You think Mayweather, or you think McGregor's got enough gas to go 12 rounds?
No,
I don't either.
No, he doesn't have enough gas to go 3 full rounds. He doesn't. Let's say I've seen him fight plenty of times, and he's the ultimate front runner. Like, in the first 2 rounds or the first round and a half, he's as good as you get, but you can see him slow down by the end of the second. I mean, we've seen it plenty of times. We've seen it versus Max Holloway. We've seen it versus Nate Diaz twice. And we've seen it versus, you know, like most of his fights, all of his wins, they happen in the first couple of rounds. The vast majority, he does not. That's like, anybody will tell you who knows anything about fighting or MMA, biggest weakness is his gas tank. So I do not. Okay, well, you know, we might as well just go straight into fight predictions. I'll let you start. What do you think? Like, how you call this fight?
I think Floyd knocks him out later in the fight.
Same here. With the 8, yeah. No, that's basically me. Like, I'm not sure when. But all I'm sure about is Floyd will do what Floyd wants to do. Like, if he wants to make it a 12-round beating, like, basically from the beginning, as soon as people started talking about it, and I said, it's, you know, it shouldn't happen, it's wrong, everything. I said that. I said, basically, you want an idea of what this fight will look like, and I'm more convinced than ever now, especially with the 8-ounce gloves. You ever see Floyd Ricky Hatton in 2007?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay, this fight, I predict, I honestly believe this is what we're going to see. We're going to see a mix of Floyd versus Ricky Hatton and Floyd versus Arturo Gatti. Just worse, because Arturo Gatti was a great fighter. was an excellent boxer, and Conor is not. Ricky Hatton was an overrated boxer, but he was still a boxer. He was a lifelong boxer. He was overrated. He was not on Floyd's level. And basically, the difference between these two fights and the common ground of these two fights is that Floyd put a beating on both men. The Arturo Gatti, he had him out by, I think he knocked him out. He TKO'd him in the 5th round, but it was a 5-round beating. He did what he wanted, and that's when Floyd was extremely aggressive before he started having problems with his brittle hands and breaking his hands quite often. And he just put a beating on this guy. And Arturo Gatti was an amazing fighter. He was such a warrior, but Floyd, he was tailor-made for Floyd to do what he did to him that night, because Arturo Gatti was honest. He came to fight. He was a gamer, and Floyd just completely outclassed him and put a beating on him. The difference with Hatton, well, the thing in common with the Hatton fight is that Floyd put a beating on Hatton, but he took his time. Basically, before he fought Hatton called him out and said, yeah, if you're a real man, you'll fight me. And Floyd basically said, I'm going to make an example of you. I'm going to put on a clinic and I'll show the world the difference between a decent boxer that's been overrated, that's, had his record padded, who fought like some good fighters at the right time of their careers when they were past their best, and a master. And that's exactly what he did. Go and watch it. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. He put on a clinic that night. He outclassed him for 10 rounds. And around the middle of the 10th, he knocked him out in the most devastating and classiest way possible. He check hooked him. And basically Hatton fell head first into the turnbuckle. It was one of the most beautiful knockouts you'll ever see. But for 10 rounds, he schooled him. And I see this fight as a mixture of both. But now, like, Floyd could knock him out in the 1st round if he wanted to. I just don't know where his head's at. The thing that gives me pause, and that's why I will not call the round or what kind of fight it's going to be, is that he asked for 8-ounce gloves. And to me, in my experience, the way I see it, it means that Floyd wants to put a beating on him. Like he's definitely going to want to finish him.
What I want to see, Cyrus, is I want to see McGregor go to his corner at the bell and then not get up. I don't want Floyd to knock him out. I want McGregor to refuse to return to the ring. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I don't know. Like, the 8-ounce glove really gives me pause. Like, if Floyd decides he wants to put a beating on him, we might never see McGregor again. Like, he could, like, his dad, Floyd Sr. actually called it. He said, like, if he keeps talking, he might end up with brain damage. And and if that's what happens, then then there's a good chance, because one thing I've noticed about McGregor, and that's something Uriah Faber said really, really early at the beginning of the whole Mick Leprechaun bandwagon celebration, or whatever you want to call it, is McGregor is someone who you put him in danger, you put him you put him in a difficult situation, you put him through the ringer, he'll quit. And he'll quit fast. I mean, look at every one of his losses. He never fought.
Yeah.
Like you got him in a submission to hold, he tapped real quick. And the same thing, and this is a boxer, and he got to box with him. We were going to talk about it later anyways. Paulie Malignaggi said, one thing I've noticed, sparring with him, was like, he's a great front runner when he's putting a beating on you. He's a great fighter. He's fun and all that. But when you put him in an uncomfortable spot, when you put pressure on him, he does not enjoy it, and he wants a way out. And
he doesn't like to be hit.
He doesn't like to be hit, and he doesn't like going through what's that word? Jesus Christ, my vocabulary is fucked up tonight. Basically, he doesn't respond well to adversity. That's the word. He does not respond well to adversity, and everything about his career tells me that. And I mean, like, we're talking about real, honest to goodness fighters. And I mean, Paulie Malignaggi, whether you like him or not, the man was a warrior. The man had no knockout power whatsoever, went through the ringer with some of the nastiest, toughest, greatest fighters ever, never backed down. And for him to say that is very revealing. For a guy like Uriah Faber to say that, I listen, because Uriah Faber is one of the toughest guys that I've ever seen in any sport.
Faber said that, huh?
Oh, yeah, really early. He said that in 2015. And he wasn't even trying to insult him. He was just saying, is this, there's trash talking, and then there's just the guy being honest. And Uriah Faber is one of the nicest guys you'll meet, but he's very honest. And he said, this is what I've noticed about you, Conor. You're somebody who has the art of self-preservation. He said, most fighters from my generation don't. Like, you put me in a chokehold, I will fight it, or I will go out, or I will get out of it. You put me in a knee bar, an arm bar, I won't tap. But you will tap immediately. You will preserve your health. You will preserve that arm. As soon as you feel any kind of pressure, you will. It was one of those poignant moments for me, because it was very revealing, and it's true. McGregor does not respond well to adversity. Brock never responded well to getting punched in the face, but even he responded well to adversity, because when, what's his name? Shane Carwin put him through the ringer. Shane Carwin had him so close to being stopped, and he went through it and got out of it, and ended up choking Shane Carwin out, because Shane Carwin gassed a bit. He got tired because he put so much into punching Brock's head. That's Brock's greatest performance as a fighter. It was that night, because he went through hell of a lot for a round, and came back and won in the second. But McGregor, you put him in danger. I mean, apart from the second Diaz fight, like, Diaz had him hurt. Diaz made the mistake of not letting up a bit. But like, he did go through adversity, and he came through it. He did run. And like, all these people who said, oh yeah, he did the same thing Mayweather did. No, shut the fuck up. That's not. There's a difference between sticking and moving and maneuvering and turning your back and running away. And that's what he did, but he survived, and he was able to win a decision that he didn't deserve. True Temper, I'm going to ask you for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
If you have anything to say, just go ahead and say it. Hey, brother. Sorry about that. It's my neighbor knocking on the door.
Oh.
So yeah, no, basically, like, that's what I see. So basically, the way I see it is, if Mayweather really brings out the sadistic side that every fighter has and just puts a beating on him, we may never see McGregor again. Because, like, imagine, like, he gets humiliated, which he will. Like, he's gonna have I mean, there's the injuries, there's getting over it, getting over all that brain trauma, and then coming back to UFC and MMA and having every fighter he meets telling him to shut the fuck up. You got, you got schooled. You've been for good, and I don't know how well he deal with that, because there's another thing. He dishes out abuse and trash talk very well, but he doesn't.
He can't take it.
He can't take any kind of criticism or.
I don't see him. Well, I said months ago when there was talk about this Mayweather fight that, and then I started to see some of the numbers they were projecting. I said then that that McGregor is not going to ever compete again once he does this fight, because he's going to make 75 to 100 million bucks. Why the hell would he want to fight after that anyway? I don't.
Yeah, well,
I don't see it. I just don't see it in him to take the risk to make money when he's got money.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I'm very interested in knowing exactly how much he's. I mean, did you see the leaked fight purse last week? They leaked it on
leaked what?
On Bloody Elbow. They leaked the purse, because you remember when they made the fight, they said, like, we're not going to disclose.
Who knows that? Who knows that stuff for sure? Mayweather says he thinks he's going to make 300 million bucks on this fight. Whether he does or not, whether he does or not, how can he ever prove it? Can't prove it. They can say anything they want to say.
Anytime he wants. Last time around, he proved it. Last time around, he showed his check. I mean, even this time, he showed $100 million check, guaranteed. So, and that's just part of it, right? No, I honestly, like, the last super fight he had, but his last super fight. Okay, the last fight of his career was Andre Berto, right? He made 70 mil off of that. 70 mil. The one against Pacquiao, the night of the fight, he was paid 100 million. And then he made a whole lot more, because remember, when Mayweather fights, Mayweather is a promotion all onto his own. So he gets a piece of everything. Like, you sell a hot dog the night of the fight, he gets a piece of that. I've heard he even gets a piece of hotel rooms.
Okay, but do you believe anything that any of those people tell you? You take it at 100% face value?
No, not 100%.
Of course you don't.
I definitely don't believe. No, Mayweather, yes, when it comes to money, because you know what? Like, for all his nonsense, like all this stuff he said, he likes to talk about money. But Mayweather, when he talks about money, you should listen, because he's bragging to make you hate him. But I don't know how to say this. It's all money. It's all bullshit. But he makes real money. He's the master of his own destiny when it comes to making money, right? Like, he doesn't answer to anybody. He's his own boss. So if he tells you, like, I'm making 100 million, right? He's making a lot more than that. McGregor is the opposite. McGregor is always talking about, I make this, I make that, and half the time, like Chael Sonnen said, he's making a lot less than that. He's trying to hype himself up.
Entertainers that talk about their money, in the first place, I don't believe them. And in the second place, I don't give a shit. I really don't care. It's immaterial to me. I'm not saying we should care how much they're making. So for them to come out and tell me how much money they have, or to tell me how much money they're going to make, I could care less. I really don't care.
Now, what I'm trying to say, and this is why I started talking about this, is, like, everybody's saying, oh, he's going to make so much money, he's never going to have to fight again. Number one, I'm just looking at it from a common sense point, right? Like, he's making a lot of money, but it's not all his. It's not all his, because the UFC are literally leasing him, right? Because UFC have the rights over everything.
I understand.
So that means that they're going to get a piece. That's why I asked you, did you read the article? Because the article on Bloody Elbow is quite interesting. Like, it's actually better than I thought it was going to be. Like, for example, the Mayweather, anything from 200 to 250 million. McGregor is 75 million. The UFC, I believe, get 25% of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I thought it was going to be 50-50. The pay-per-view split, which is the real money, especially if it sells as much as everybody's saying it is. They're saying it's going to break all records. Dana White came on to say it's going to be like anywhere from 5.9 to 7 million pay-per-view buys. That's where the real money is. And the pay-per-view split is 80-20 to Mayweather. So Mayweather gets 80% of that. McGregor gets 20. But the thing is that the UFC get 50% of that, a 50% share of McGregor's share of the pay-per-view. So that means like they get, like McGregor really gets 10%, right? So that's still a lot of money, but then like he's not getting all, he basically close to 50% of that is going to the UFC. And then you have the tax man to consider. And then you have the fact that McGregor is living at large right now. He spends a lot of money. And, like there's rich and there's hood rich. And that's why I'm thinking maybe I could see McGregor fighting even if he doesn't want to. Because, like, come on, like how many fighters have you heard about coming out of retirement, fighting fights they shouldn't fight because they were broke or they were close to being broke or they had a tax problem or, you know what I mean? So
I know what you mean.
So that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But if I had, say I had $50 million.
Yeah.
I'd put it, you know how much money that would yield in just a simple interest savings account?
Yeah. No, but you're absolutely right.
Anybody could live on that.
Anybody should be. There's guys who blow through $50 million in a year. There's guys who do that. There's guys who like that saying, more money, more problems. See, a guy like you who has common sense, who's sensible, of course, you'd never have to worry about money again. But there's some people, I mean, come on, like Mike Tyson blew, okay, he had money stolen as well, but he blew, like they said he should have been the first fighter to be a billionaire. Like that's how much money he was making. Okay, you have to take account for the fact that Mike Tyson was a man-child, and I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way, but I've met people who've met him, and he was the kind of guy, like he liked you, he'd want to buy you a house. He liked you, he wanted to buy you a car. He had a whole entourage of people who were just leeching him. And then he had two of the worst people in sports history. He had Don King and he had Robin Givens, and they bled him dry mentally, emotionally, and financially. And in the end, Mike Tyson was broke. And I mean, he's much better off now. It's like recently he in an interview, he said something really cool. He said, I'm making good money now. It's nothing close to what I was making when, in my heyday, but I'm enjoying it a lot more. Because, I've learned about money. I've learned how to handle my money. So, like, I'm not even making a quarter of what I used to make. But I know how to handle it, and it's good enough for me. I don't need that much. But, I mean, he's obviously making good money, and he's a wealthy man. But, there's a lot of people like that. I mean, for Christ's sakes, Michael fucking Jackson, the biggest singer / superstar / phenomenon, entertainment phenomenon in history, probably outside of Elvis, had money problems because like he was one of these guys, like, he sees a nice car or he sees something he likes. He's not going to buy one. He's going to buy 10. Like I've seen that documentary. He goes shopping. And I mean, when, this is not you and me shopping. This is him buying things that are the same price as his houses. And he'll buy 5 of them in one go. So, the $50 million is more than enough for anybody, but it's not more than enough for people who have, and remember, fighters as well. And, like the more they study brain damage and CTE and all that, there's a correlation with between overspending and being reckless with your money, reckless with your own body. Fighters often have that problem where they have money problems because they don't know. They're so impulsive that they live day by day. Like I've heard so many fighters. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fighting paycheck for paycheck. You'd be surprised. Yeah. I mean, look at the NFL. The NFL is another place where is another sport where American football, where these guys take a lot of damage to their bodies, but most of all to their brains. And like some of these guys make serious money, like huge money, and they end up broke within a couple years of retirement, or sometimes before they retire. So, if it can happen to them, it can happen to anybody. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the best paid athletes on planet Earth are NBA players, and they often go broke. So, that's the only thing I'm wondering. Like, I'm trying to look at it.
Let's look at this from this point of view. If McGregor gets beat in this fight, do you think he's going to find another money grab just like this again?
He might. It depends. It all depends how he gets beat. Remember, and this is one of the few things I agree with. There's a lot of there's a huge narrative out there, but that one of the few I agree with. Most of them are stupid, but one of them I agree with is Mayweather is the one taking all the risks. McGregor isn't taking any risks at all. He's taking all the risks because, and one thing I do agree with is quite a few people have made that point. They said, if McGregor can last 12 rounds, even if he loses every single round, the fact he stood up with a boxer and possibly the greatest boxer that's ever lived is a win for him. And I mean, Mayweather said it himself, and Mayweather's own channel has said that. Like, if he makes it through the 12 rounds, even if he, the only way he doesn't look like he's won, he's won a moral victory, and people will talk about, like, the narrative will be McGregor took on the greatest boxer ever and, went 12 rounds with him, and it'll be like a loss for Mayweather. And Mayweather, believe me, he's very savvy. He knows that. So that's another reason he wants to knock him out. So I think the only way he doesn't come out the winner is if he gets humiliated, schooled for 12 rounds, but badly. Like what Mayweather did to Berto, or what Mayweather did to what's his name? I'm sorry, I'm having a brain freeze here. Basically, what Mayweather did to Canelo. And he didn't humiliate Canelo, but he schooled him. He took him to school, and Canelo barely landed a punch, like barely. But even like, it's still, I think he has to knock him out to come out the winner. Because even then, even if he knocks him out, there's a whole lot of people who are preparing. They're already making excuses for McGregor. If he is, yeah. Every day you hear basically excuses, like, oh, look how brave he is for taking on Mayweather. That's the narrative they're pushing. Dana's hard at
brave
work
my ass.
No, it's not brave.
Let me ask you a question, Cyrus. If you could take the opportunity to fight Floyd Mayweather for $75 million, would you accept it?
Of course, in a New York Minute, I'd accept fighting Mayweather for $500,000.
Okay, you would do it. I would do it too.
Of course I would.
I'm 60. Yeah. I'm 65 years old, but I would let him knock me out for $75 million.
Yeah, same here. $75 million, man. Like that's life-changing money.
Yeah,
that's life-changing money. But that's to us. Like, I maintain that is life-changing. I mean, 500,000 is life-changing. Like, for sure. For me. But for McGregor, I don't know, because I don't follow his Instagram account. I've seen enough pictures on Bloody Elbow and on YouTube to know that he's living the good life, and I don't begrudge him for it. But I have this feeling, and I've heard it before, that he's living beyond his means. Like, everything about McGregor. Yeah. Like, he does some really crazy shit. Like I may be reading too much into it, but like he's having some blowback. Like recently, he got sued by a limo company because he rented some luxury car that's worth the price of a house,
Oh
and
yeah, he
stomped all
trashed
over
it.
it, shit
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, that's expensive. You know, that kind of behavior and that kind of lifestyle is expensive, and you know, you'd be surprised. And he has an entourage. I don't know him. I don't follow him personally. The only times I really pay attention to him is when he's about to fight. But you know, an entourage means, you know, you have to keep people employed.
Keep
You
him
have
paid.
to, yeah, you have to keep them paid. You have to keep them happy. I don't know how many leeches he has around him, but you know, every entourage, a lot of fighters have had that problem. When you're that big, you have a lot of leeches. Even a sensible guy, a humble guy like George St. Pierre, he had to change his entourage because he one day realized that, you know, he had people living off of him and not helping him out and not being, you know, like not being straight with him. So a lot, you know, like more money, more problems. Fame brings a lot of nasty people around you. Yep. And it's not easy. Like, you know, I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's the truth. Like every great man, you know, it's not just in sports. And every great man had people around him who were there just for the good times. And those people cost money. Those people don't really care about you. I mean, look at Rhonda. Rhonda had people around her who weren't good. Like I've heard stories, like people who cared about her, like true friends who said, like, you know, she had a lot of people who are here for the good times. Get involved in that Hollywood crowd, and apparently McGregor is doing the same thing. You know, Hollywood is BS. It's make believe, and you know, you're starting to see the Mark Wahlbergs show up, and yeah, you know, as a fight expert, like, you know, I've sparred in, you know, in The Boxer,
Mark
and I can
Wahlberg.
tell you, you know what I mean.
Mark Wahlberg is on every other television commercial that I watch on television, and it seems too that he's in every other movie that I watch on television. I'm sick of the guy.
Oh, yeah. The man is prolific. Like as a producer, as a producer, he's really impressed me. Like the greatest thing he ever did was produce Boardwalk Empire. That's one of the greatest TV shows I've ever seen, and Mark Wahlberg brought it to fruition. So I respect him for that. But I mean, like, it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to appreciate him as an actor, because it's some douchebag shit he's coming out with, man. Like he's done some great movies, but I'm sorry, like the Transformers, give me a break, man. And
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
he's no, and let's be honest, Tom Cruise. He's no, you know, he's no Harrison Ford. Like the guy's not the greatest actor. He's done some great movies, like that one he did about those guys who get stuck in Afghanistan. That was a great movie. But then again, that was the genius of Peter Berg. So yeah, but I the more I hear from him, the more I find it hard to listen to him. It's the same for Vin Diesel, and I used to really like Vin Diesel, but these guys live in la la land, so the shit that comes out of their mouths is just is embarrassing sometimes. It's not real, you know. It's you know, Hollywood tough guys. Like, you know, the last movie I saw with Vin Diesel, I switched it off after 5 minutes, and I love douchebag movies. I love nonsense, but it was the sequel to Triple X, and he gets into a full-fledged bar fight, a street fight, and he's wearing his sunglasses, you know? It's like, come on, dude. Like, I'm watching way too much MMA to let those things go by. It's like, seriously, you're going to get into a fight with your sunglasses on? You know, nah, I'm pushing the shit off.
do you think, Cyrus, that the UFC is going to continue to invest time and money in more of these sensational fights?
Oh man, like cross sports fight, like this one, or just
like pure bullshit?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, okay. I expect them to keep on with the bullshit, absolutely. But I'm in two minds. I'm not sure. Like, if they can make money out of it, of course, because they've disgraced themselves so many times. Yeah, they're more than capable of it, and I don't know. I'm in two minds of it, because on the one hand, they've never like done anything for fighters, and on the other, Dana was wearing UFC, or no, Zuffa boxing, right? Was it UFC boxing or was it Zuffa? No, it was Zuffa boxing. Zuffa boxing T-shirt. So maybe he's planning on making a move into MMA, into boxing, and promoting boxing fights. And remember, Dana particularly, he came from boxing. Originally, he was a boxer. He's a boxing coach, and he wanted to make his way into boxing. And then, he switched to MMA. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. True Temper. I'm really not sure, but I could see it both ways. But yeah, there's another thing like that the Hay versus Manoa is building steam. I don't know how far it will go. Stipe called out Anthony Joshua, and you know what? Stipe versus Anthony Joshua is much more of a fight. It's less ridiculous than anything because Stipe is a Golden Gloves boxer. He's actually fought on an amateur level, so it's not as ridiculous. It's much more of a fight. And like, I love Anthony Joshua. I root for him. I think he's awesome, but he has one big problem: is he doesn't move his head. His head is always there to be caught, and it's not that hard to catch him. The guy's got heart. The guy's tough, but Stipe is an excellent boxer, and I'm not saying he'd win, but it's much more competitive. It's like 100 times more competitive than Mayweather versus McGregor. It really is. And like, but that's why I'm of two minds, because the Diaz brothers have been wanting to box for years, and the UFC have never allowed him to. Nate has tried to box. Nick has tried to box. They've had amazing offers apparently, because their personalities and they're superstars in their own rights, and the UFC have never allowed them to do it. So I don't know. It's really weird. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, for myself, speaking the direction that the UFC would go, if I had two fights to watch, if I had a fight to watch, Joanna, the Polish girl, fight someone.
Yo, Jake.
Yeah, if I had a choice to watch her fight or to watch Mayweather and McGregor, I'd watch her fight in a minute.
Oh, same here. Same here. She's
there would be no question of it.
Oh man, there's her. There's Valentina Shevchenko. There's
I hope Joanna knocks her fucking block off.
Who?
No, Nunes. I hope Nunes knocks Shevchenko into next Tuesday.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan of Valentina Shevchenko, so I'm not going to wish the same thing, because I'm actually like, she's one of my favorite fighters ever. But
well, Cyrus, well, fuck you very much.
Oh, there you go. We'd like to announce a fight. It's breaking news. True Temper versus Cyrus Stark. Fuck you, wait at bullshit.
Chains and knives.
And tune in for next week, when you'll be hearing plenty of N-words and racial stereotypes and racial epithets. It's going to be great, guys. But yeah, the sport. We're going to be fighting at fuck you weight. Fuck you money. And basically our purse is meat.
and we'll never even get out of our chairs.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Well, yeah. No, but seriously, like, I have nothing against Nunes. I really don't. I'm just a huge Valentina fan, and I honestly believe Valentina will beat her, but
well, I guess
you never know, right?
I guess I'm a Nunes fan because I like the way she fights, and I like her when she isn't being nasty to somebody. I like Nunes. But
don't get me wrong, I'm a Nunes fan too. I'm just a bigger fan of Valentina. I celebrated when she won the title, and I even picked her over Misha, even though I have a lot of respect for Misha. But I knew she was going to beat Misha. I picked Ronda over her because I thought Ronda. I mean, I still believe Ronda is the more complete fighter, but just Ronda did it. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I have no doubt in my mind.
Oh no, Ronda is a one-trick pony.
But even that trick is amazing. That trick is devastating. Like, look what. Okay, MMA math is dicey at best. But remember the last woman to beat Nunes, right?
What's that again?
Do you remember who the last woman was to beat Nunes? Who beat Amanda last? No, the last woman to beat was Kat Zingano. Okay, that's the fight.
No, yeah, Nunes beat Shevchenko the last time they fought.
Right.
Yeah,
and it was very, very close. Right, like a lot of people, I'm one of them, believe that if it had gone 5 rounds, Valentina would have won. But never mind. Like, Amanda won. But the last time Amanda lost, she was stopped by Kat Zingano, who's a badass. And basically, Kat Zingano broke her.
Yeah.
She broke her. Well, look what Ronda did to Kat. Ronda beat her in 14 seconds, submitted her. It's okay, fine. If people want to call Ronda a one-trick pony, and I disagree with that because Ronda knocked people out. Ronda knocked out Alexis Davis.
Whoa. Who'd she knock out?
Davis. She stopped Sarah McMahon with knees to the liver, and she knocked out Betch Correa. That's 3 people.
Okay, that's 3.
Yeah, I'm not saying she's a knockout artist, but she did knock out three women, and 2 of them were women that could have been champs. Like Kat would have been a champ. If Ronda wasn't around, she would have been the champ. Alexis Davis is seriously good. She's not famous, but Alexis Davis also beat Amanda Nunes. Alexis Davis beat Amanda Nunes in Strikeforce or Invicta. I think it was Strikeforce. She stopped her in very similar circumstances to Kat Zingano. And look what Ronda did to Alexis Davis. She knocked her out in less than a minute. I think it was 25 seconds or something. And she blasted her. She blasted, like Ronda, she's not the most technical of strikers, but she's got venom in her hands. She hits hella hard, and she has knockout power. I mean, like she knocked out 3 women. And Betch Correa, okay, she's not the most technical fighter. She's not the greatest fighter, but Betch can crack, and she actually caught Ronda. That's one thing that always bothered me about Ronda's striking, is she was very easy to catch. She was very easy to tag, right? But make no mistake, Ronda can crack, and even like this is the Mayweathers, right? So, people who know more about boxing than anybody else on the planet. Jeff Mayweather said she's not a horrible striker. She's just like, she's inches off, and inches can cost you a knockout. She said, you give me 3 months with Ronda, just boxing, her boxing will be a lot cleaner and everything. So, she's not as bad. Like that's one thing that actually I wanted to bring this up. I'm a huge Ronda fan, so yes, I'm biased. I'm going to come out and say it, I'll admit. But like, when she was on top of the world, people wrote some bullshit, like absolute nonsense. Like even a guy like Oscar De La Hoya said, I'd promote her, and I believe she could knock out any of the female world champions. He actually said that because when people get all excited about somebody, they say dumb things. A lot of people said stupid things about Ronda, like, yeah, she could beat Mayweather in boxing, shit like that. She never said that. She said things like, yes, I believe that if I grappled with Mayweather, I would win. Yeah, well, duh. Like, Mayweather's never grappled in his life, as far as I know. So yeah, if it was a grappling competition, of course she'd win. That's not a ridiculous thing to say. It was Dana that took it and ran with it and went way too far and said, oh yeah, in a street fight she'd beat him. That's a whole other thing, and that's disgusting. But what I'm saying is, when she was at the top, when she was queen of the world, she had people write and say things about her and use her for their own agendas and said ridiculous things. But now that she got beat twice, people are saying ridiculous things too in the other way, in the negative sense. And it makes me so angry because Ronda, is a badass. Ronda is a great fighter. You don't defend your title for 7 times in a row and be be a bum. Like there's a
well, I didn't.
and even
I
like
don't think she's a bum, but I don't think.
no, I'm not talking to you, Drew Temple.
I just don't. I just don't think that she's. I just don't think she's a good striker. She just is not a good striker.
No, but she's got holes. Yes, I agree. But even I was the biggest Ronda Rousey fan. I wasn't even a fan. I was a believer. And what she did for the sport, what she did for a lot of people and women and just everybody, like what she, I mean, I loved watching her. I loved watching her fights. I loved what she had to say. And I'll always be a fan. I'll always be a Ronda believer. And if she ever, I hope she comes back. And if she never comes back, thanks for the memories, Ronda. That's how I feel. You understand? And I'm a Ronda, you know, like I'm a Ronda believer. But one thing I'll tell you is her striking is not as bad. It was never as good as people made it out to be when she was on top. And it's not as bad as people think it is. Like for Jeff Mayweather to say, give me 3 months and I can fix the boxing side of it, because again, like she's an MMA fighter. She said I can fix her holes in 3 months because she's good. She's a great athlete, and she, you know, she's a freak athlete. Like look at her judo, look at her grappling. It's amazing. So he said I could teach her to fix.
Why did she maintain that horseshit boxing coach that she had when a guy like Roger Mayweather was saying that he could make her better?
Well, loyalty. Like a lot of people have loyalty.
Loyalty don't feed the bulldog.
Yeah, but you know, some people like I respect that. It's a shame it cost her, but loyalty is huge, you know. Like and look, even McGregor, I don't believe he's that loyal as he says he is. But look, he's always trained with the same guys, and they're a bunch of fucking idiots. They're a bunch of, you know, blowhards. Aside from that one guy, Gunnar Nelson and James, I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
From Bellator, they're all a bunch of fucking blowhards. His coach is just deplorable. His coach is 10 times worse than anything Ronda dealt with. His coach says absolute nonsense. Like he's not even capable of watching a fight. Remember the second Diaz fight?
Yeah.
When Diaz had him up against the fence in the clinch and beating the shit out of him. He was saying, "You're winning the clinch, Connor. You're winning the clinch." He was getting his ass handed to him. And he was saying, he was telling him, "You're winning the clinch." I mean, it got so embarrassing that Diaz actually took a break from beating the shit out of McLeprechaun to tell the coach, "Shut the fuck up. You ain't winning shit." You understand? But like, okay, you can say what you want about Edmund Tarverdian, but John Kavanagh is the worst. Is 10 times worse. That doofus with the ponytail with the man bun is an idiot. Ido Portal. Fucking what's his name? His boxing coach. I can't remember his name right now. He's another fucking moron. No, Kavanagh is his overall coach, and then he's got a striking coach. I can't remember. We've been seeing a lot about him. He's a fucking moron. They're all deluded fools. But McGregor would rather die than leave them. Like he goes out and calls other guys losers and turncoats for moving camps or for leaving fight gyms. You know, like look what he did with Dillashaw, snake in the grass, from moving from Team Alpha Male to Colorado, that super gym in Colorado. I forget what they're called. You know, he moved on with Dwayne Bang Ludwig and moved to Colorado to. They're a big time gym. He's training with the Matt Browns, the Neil Magny's, and you know, when a fighter leaves, to him, he thinks it's betrayal. So you know, like some people think that way. Some people think. I mean, you see it in basketball all the time. When a player leaves a team, he has every right to, but you know, like you've basically betrayed everything that's well and good. I mean, come on. Who could forget the famous letter, the open letter Dan Gilbert wrote? You know, basically calling.
I'm not familiar
LeBron,
with that.
Oh, the day LeBron James took his towns to Miami.
Oh, Gilbert. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, Dan Gilbert. He wrote that. He called him Benedict
I
Arnold.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that shit. Some people have a funny idea of what loyalty means. So, yeah. But Rhonda, I like everything I've heard about her. Her interviews, her blogs, her vlogs. Loyalty is everything to her, and I'm not saying I'm like her, but loyalty is very important to me, and I never forget a kindness. People who were there for me when I was down or when things weren't good for me, I never forget. So, like, if she's that kind of person, then more power to her. But that doesn't mean that she, that she shouldn't look at other things. I mean, right now, everybody and their mother is saying that she'll never come back. Well, I wish her luck. I mean, I guess she's getting married, so I hope she gets everything she wants, and I wish her luck in like, if she wants to do movies, wish her luck in her film career. I hope she has a great time. But personally, as a fan of hers and as a fan of this sport, I want to see her at least one more time, and I want to see her go out on a high, man. And I want her to shut everybody up. But that's me being selfish, But I just don't agree with people who say she was a one-trick pony. No, I'm not talking about you, because that's your opinion, and I respect it. I just disagree with it. I think she was an amazing fighter. I mean, no other woman has come close, except for Cyborg, and now Joanna. In the sport of MMA, no one's come close. I mean, remember, it was until Nunes defeated her. You had Holly. Holly failed to defend. Misha failed to defend, and Amanda Nunes has only defended it once. So, Ronda can say she's the greatest fighter, or at least, like, it's between her. I think Joanna has defended it 5 times, which is super impressive against absolute monsters. So she's getting close. But, like, officially, the UFC, because they're so disrespectful, they say she's only defended it 6 times. No, my friend, it was 7 times. She defended it against Sarah Kaufman in Strikeforce. The fact that the UFC bought Strikeforce, that record should stand, because when she defended it against Sarah Kaufman, they'd already been bought by the UFC. And the UFC had no women's division. That meant that the best women fought for Strikeforce. The biggest promoter of MMA, of women's MMA, was Strikeforce. So that's legit. So she defended her belt 7 times. And that's, there's very few people who get to 7. I mean, you've had great champions, world-class champions, who failed to defend even once. Johnny Hendricks never defended once. Luke Rockhold, who to me, I honestly believe will go on to become the greatest middleweight in MMA history. He has it in him, and I believe that he's going to get there. He failed to defend it because he made the mistake of underestimating Michael fucking Bisping and got knocked out, got TKO'd. So, like, it can happen. It's very difficult. You can be the best and get caught. Look at Jose Aldo, the greatest featherweight that's ever lived, one of the greatest MMA fighters, got knocked out in 13 seconds because he listened. He let McGregor get to him, and he rushed in on something. Like, so for her to defend her title 7 times against the best the sport had to offer, that's huge. And she's a Hall of Famer, and she's definitely a GOAT. I don't know if she's the GOAT. To me, she's the GOAT. But, like, I know there's plenty of people who will disagree with me. But, I'm really upset. Like, sometimes some of the shit I hear about her, people saying, and she was on top, like some of the nonsense people would say about her, and I'm upset now because it's just wrong. Like,
who's saying what about Joanna? Who's saying what?
No, I'm talking about Ronda right now. But yeah,
Ronda.
Joanna. Oh, I'll tell you what upsets me about Joanna. Joanna is not being promoted right. Joanna is one of the most amazing strikers the world will ever see. Joanna is, I mean, basically, I honestly believe, like, with her technique, everything, she's like Mayweather-like. She's Mayweather-like because she adapts like this, like with a snap of her fingers. Remember, she fought her last defense. It's probably her most impressive because she fought a monster.
That little chick
in Juliana, not Pena,
Brazilian
Juliana,
girl, wasn't it?
Yeah, Andrade.
Yeah.
Andrade, Jessica Andrade. Yeah. And that woman is, I mean, we're talking about Mike Tyson kind of power at that weight. And I mean, she manhandled Joanna. And Joanna just like by inches adjusted and just completely shut her down. Completely shut her down. And I don't think Joanna had the capability of knocking her out. I don't think she did, because that girl can take a ton of damage, which she did. But she could have knocked her out. Like, she caught Joanna, hurt her every time. Like, at the end of the fight, she only caught Joanna, I think throughout the whole fight, she caught her 10 times. But Joanna's face was messed up. So that just shows you how hard and how devastating her strikes are.
Well, and look Joanna at the girl's build. She's built like a little Hercules.
Right? She's just like nasty. And I love that fighter. And like, I picked Joanna out of respect. But I honestly wouldn't have been surprised if Andrade had won. Andrade had won. And
if I'd have put money on a fight, I'd have put money on that fight, because Joanna was so much bigger and just a superior striker. Just I haven't seen anybody that can box with her. Nobody.
Yeah. Well, I have. What's her name? Valentina. Valentina beat her 3 times in Muay Thai.
At what weight?
That's the fight.
At which weight?
At 125. Remember, Joanna is a natural 125er. She's a natural flyweight. And so is Valentina. It's just that Valentina is such a badass. Valentina is so good and so tough that she can fight at bantamweight and win, and will win the title. But the fight to make is, look, this is how I see it, right? Feel free to disagree with me, and I know you do. Beating basically it's next month, UFC 215. I see Valentina taking the bantamweight title and moving down to flyweight, because the UFC have just added flyweight as a division, and facing Joanna in a super fight. Both of them putting their titles on the line and not putting their titles on the line, but competing at flyweight at the top of the sport, and this being probably the greatest women's fight ever. The greatest and the biggest. And if they promote it properly, that's what it will be. It might even eclipse Cyborg versus Gina Carano as the biggest women's fight in MMA history. They fought 3 times in Muay Thai. Valentina shut Joanna down. And remember, Valentina, just to tell you how amazing Valentina is, Valentina walks around at 135. That's her weight. That's her natural weight. Yeah. She doesn't cut when she fights at bantamweight. That's her weight. She's a very strong, powerfully built woman. She's a very small woman. She's more muscular than Joanna, but they're around the same kind of weight and size and height. So, that's where both of them are natural. I mean, like, remember, Miesha Tate said, like, when she was younger, she was a natural flyweight. Jessica Ai, who's a badass, who's had a bad time of it recently. I think she lost 4 fights in a row or 3 fights in a row. She's a natural flyweight. So she was fighting bigger women, heavier women. She's a natural flyweight. There's a lot of women who are natural flyweights who are cutting way too much weight at either strawweight or bantamweight. They're like they're undersized at bantamweight, or they're depleted at strawweight. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, there's plenty of girls at flyweight. Like, I'm really excited about that weight. Featherweight is a bit of a toss-up because there aren't that many girls who can fight at featherweight. Like, I think there's currently on the UFC roster, I think there are 5 legit featherweights who would be a threat to Cyborg. I'm not saying they'd win. There's Kat Zingano. There's Holly Holm. There's Jermaine Durandamy, who didn't want to fight her for whatever reason. There's
because she's a
what's her name?
fucking coward.
Well, yeah, there's two ways to look at it. But Jermaine Durandamy is a legit featherweight, but she didn't want to fight there. She moved back down to bantamweight. There's what's her name? I always forget her name. Raquel. No, not Raquel. Raquel Pennington could maybe fight at featherweight. She's just such a badass. She could. I don't think she's interested because she wants to make her run at the title. There's what's her name? The girl that beat Fallon Fox, the man. The guy that used to be a man. I mean, the woman that used to be a man, Fallon Fox. Fallon Fox got beat by this. God, how can I? Rachel Evans Smith. Rachel Evans Smith is a natural featherweight. She's a big girl. I think she's 5'8" and walks around at around 150, 155. She's a big girl, big, powerful wrestler. She would do great at featherweight. And I know for a fact she struggles to make 135. So I'm looking forward to her fighting at featherweight. There's a couple others. Okay, there's that monster from Australia who I'm absolutely huge fan of. What's her name? Megan Anderson. She's a legit featherweight. She's 6 foot.
Wow.
Bigger than Cyborg. Yeah. And if you see her fight, her thing is, and she's a smart girl, and her coach, James Prowse or James, they were very honest about it. They said, we want to fight Cyborg as late as possible because she still has a lot to learn. The one thing about Megan Anderson, like her strikes are nasty, but again, she does not move her head. She leads with her chin, like her chin's out, like a la Derek Brunson. So that wouldn't be very good. Like she, I could see her having serious problems with someone like Holly Holm or Kat Zingano because she could get caught. And I mean, not to mention Cyborg, who's the most devastating striker in WMA history. But in the future, that's going to be a super fight. But, the UFC need to get busy and start developing more and signing more featherweights. There are some very good featherweights out there. We just don't know of them. There's some good featherweights in Russia. There's some good featherweights in South America, and they're starting to sign them little by little. Brazil in particular, they've got some really good featherweights. I don't know if they're good enough to make it competitive with Cyborg, but they've got them. So yeah, that's my 2 cents, anyways. To something else, to another subject, or
let's save that for another time, Cyrus.
All right, yeah. I mean, we've been here long enough. We've had,
we've been here for 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly, man. So, like, you have anything else to say, or are you good?
No, nothing right now. Next time, before we participate in his podcast again, I'm going to have some stuff better prepared so that I can present it a little better.
Oh, you did fine, man. You did fine. You did more than fine. Your stuff was great. Thanks for.
Well, I learned a lot, Cyrus.
Well, so did I. So did I, man. I always enjoy talking MMA with you, True Temper, because you, just sports in general, because, always a lot to learn. It's always good to get a different perspective. And, you always bring
Yeah.
So
I enjoy talking this, when we're talking in posts and G plus, it's not the same as talking to someone. It's
right.
It's never right. The same, No,
it's not the same, man. It's not the same. I mean, instant messaging and G plus is great, like sharing stuff, but like to have a conversation, this is better. You can't beat this. So, basically this was what it was. It was a great conversation that, other people could view. But I promise you, next time Gerald will be there to limit my ranting, because I know I babble and I know I go off on stuff. I'm just passionate.
No, but you have a passion for what you're speaking about, Cyrus. I appreciate that.
Cheers, man. Well, thanks for bearing with me, and to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope it wasn't too hard to follow. And I want to wish you all a good night, and we'll see you next week. True Temper, any final thoughts or words?
No, nothing other than have a good evening, Cyrus.
And the same to you, True Temper. Well, this was The Soul of a Fighter, episode 7. From True Temper Rocket and Cyrus Stark, we wish you a good night. Cyrus out.